All right, good afternoon, Composition 1. Another day at the office. Like I said, this is this is the lecture for week 8. And I'm going to do one more next week, and then we're going to permanently return to the classroom for the rest of the semester, okay? Hopefully you've got some of your midterms done. I've done 2, and I've graded them, so a small weight has been lifted off my back. And I've done some papers, worked on some papers this weekend, so hopefully this upcoming week isn't too strenuous for you. But we'll keep this light, as we normally do. Serious, but light. We finished off, I mentioned briefly at the end of the last chapter, chapter 3, the last page. There is one more exercise that I would like to talk about. It's called A Horrible Hotel. And what you have to do is you have to write a topic sentence and fix the simple sentences and then complete the supporting sentences. It's a really good exercise, and the exam is going to include a question just like this. Different topic, different words, but there's going to be a question on the exam, a test question, just like this. So we will do this. As I promised, during midterms, I will not give you any homework. So I've checked all of your homework except the response paper, but I read a couple of them. The first 2 that I have read, I've only read 2 out of 15, but the first 2 I read were good. Some basic problems like grammar and some organization and connections that need to be worked on, but structurally good. Topic sentence, supporting sentences, concluding sentence, on topic for the most part, and some good examples. So yeah, I'm hoping the rest of them are like that too. Today we're going to leave that horrible hotel question on page 25. We're going to leave that behind, and like I said, on week 10, our first class in person, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff from chapter 3. Chapter 4 is called, the title is An Exceptional Person. We're going to continue to do brainstorming. That's another thing that's good about having an in-person class, is that we can brainstorm together. I can tell you to brainstorm, and I can brainstorm and demonstrate in front of you, but it's not the same as, sharing ideas. Brainstorming in a group is very helpful, and actually vocalizing, it depends on the person, but vocalizing your argument, vocalizing what you say is very helpful, because when you hear yourself say something, it doesn't matter if you're talking about in Korean or English or Chinese or French. When you say it, sometimes it sounds different, right? Because there's sort of something in your head. You're not really fully aware of it all the time, but in your head, there's a voice. You can be just sitting there, and you can talk to yourself in your head. I'm doing it right now. I said to myself in my head, I'm thinking about talking to myself in my head, because I had nothing else to say to myself at the moment. But you can talk to yourself. You have a voice you can vocalize something inside your head, but you usually just do it unconsciously. If you actually vocalize something, in other words, you read what you wrote. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to read out loud some of the answers, some of your homework in week 10. We're going to catch up with all of this interactive stuff that we need to do, because again, it's only one direction right now. Actually, even maybe next week in this class, I'll print off some of the response papers. I will keep it anonymous. Sorry, I have a sore throat. No Omicron as far as I know, just regular sore throat. Excuse me. I'm going to print out some of the response papers for various reasons, just sort of randomly. There'll be some good ones and bad ones probably. so you can just hear what other students say. That's and you can hear yourself. You probably didn't read your paper out loud to yourself before you handed it in. People don't normally do that, but this is very helpful if you actually read your writing out loud. I have on hand here, actually. So just so I don't, make anybody nervous or ashamed. It's always anonymous, but this is my writing. I wrote this over the last couple weeks, okay? This is about Virginia Woolf. If any of you are familiar with Virginia Woolf, this is my paper about Virginia Woolf. This is my first paragraph. So remember, this is an essay. This is not, so this paragraph is sort of an introductory paragraph, but it's supposed to get, narrow down to my argument as soon as possible. But, this is multiple pages. So there's 4 paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, 5 paragraphs, okay? In this short story, we have a sort of feminist manifesto with a spiraling structure revolving around a mark on the wall that continuously tries to break free of a thought pattern entrenched in patriarchal history. That probably is language that you're not familiar with. As the mind of the narrator wanders away from its focus on the mark, its thoughts are pulled into the swirls and eddies of conventional thought patterns related to art, literature, politics, philosophy, war, or whatever association surfaces from the stream of consciousness. At first, it would seem that any subject might be included in that haphazard pattern, but the consistency of environmental and historical imagery, along with the questioning of the ideas hanging on those pivotal cultural symbols, amounts to a criticism of this enclosed concept of civilization that is buttressed by the relics of Western patriarchy. Okay, that's 3 sentences. I did that on purpose, okay? But look at how big those sentences are, right? That's a paragraph. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. Those are huge sentences with a lot of conjunctions. So remember last week when I was talking about complex sentences, that's what happens when you try to pack as many ideas as you can into one sentence. 3 sentences, that says everything about my topic. Now, I'm not asking you to, I'm just giving you an idea of, that's what academic writing is like, okay? So the more detailed, the more specific you make your ideas, the focus your argument, the better. That's really narrowing down of my point. My point is basically that her ideas are organized in a way that reflects a feminine resistance to male civilization, male ideas and organization. That's what the point is. But it took me 100 words to express that, okay? Is that concise? Now that I read it to you, I think not so much. I think it's a very wordy introduction. Now that's a certain style, and that's the way Virginia Woolf writes. So I feel like it's okay for me to write like that too, because I'm talking about her writing. But the first thing, once I read that out loud, the first thing I think to myself is, that's difficult to read. And you don't realize that, that's the way that you write. That's the way I write. That's not because I naturally wanted to write that way. It's because I've been an English major for 20 years. I've been an English professor for 12. I have a master's degree in English. So I was trained to write that way. So, vocalizing makes you realize things. The same thing happened to me when the first time I read my book. This is the 3rd edition. And I actually, when I edited after the 1st edition, in some cases I corrected errors. Some cases I smoothed out some connections. In other cases I just realized that I was using a lot of words, but not saying very much. And no student wants to read 300 pages when they can read 200, let's be honest. In fact, nobody really wants to do that, but especially students. Like if you look at a textbook and you're like, oh God, this textbook's too big. That's not a good thing. So, The second edition didn't get much bigger, but the third edition did because I started adding more content. But I actually shrank down the size a little bit in the second edition. It didn't get shrunken. I added to it, but I shrank it down first, and then I started rebuilding it. That should probably happen to your paper too. But anyway, we're learning. We're learning about the basic level, which is turning, good sentences into good paragraphs. That's why topic to paragraph is the the title of this book. So back to exceptional people, right? The core concepts and skills. Brainstorming, using adjectives. We're going to continue doing that. Learn how to write better concluding sentences. And capitalization, I think you should be able to do that already. And writing about people. How is it that how should we approach writing to people? Okay, I'm going to stand to the side a little bit. Maybe the other side. I'll stand to the other side so that you can see what I'm writing here. But before I talk about people, how to write about people, let's just mention one thing. There is an order when you have a list of adjectives. In this book, in the last chapter, they had an exercise where they said something like, the library is old, it is very beautiful. And you can combine, using commas, you can take out the pronoun and and you can take out the repetition of the verb so that you end up with the library is old and very beautiful, right? And then you can do that with more adjectives. You can have 3 or 4 or 5, and you can substitute commas as you're making sort of a list in that sentence. So, for example, 11b on page 24 says, the river was deep, the river was wide, it was cold. So you can say the river was deep, wide, and cold. But should I say it in that order? What sounds right? Cold, wide, and deep? Cold, deep, and wide? Wide, deep, and cold? It's not that important, but there is actually an order. There is actually an order. So, okay, so the first thing is quantity. So if there's a number, right? If it's 5 rivers, the number goes first, okay? So if I'm talking about 5 cold, deep, and wide rivers, then the 5 is always going to come first. Just remember number first. Next, quality. So if it has some aspect that's descriptive, it's related to some quality of the thing, it's an opinion, right? Nice. So 5 nice cold rivers. Nice has to go second. That's an opinion. That's a judgment. That's not a fact. You think the river's nice. Somebody else might say the river's dangerous. That's a quality. Okay? So number, quantity, opinion, quality. Those are the most important to get first. Not quantity, then quality. Always. And then after that, you can mix them up a little bit and nobody's going to really notice. But anyway, after that, size, everybody, big, small, after that. Age, right? Old, new, young, okay? What's next? Shape, triangle, triangular, circular, fat. I think I'd consider that a shape. Slim or fat. Fat in my case. Color. Proper adjective, which is like Canadian, for example, or Korean, right? Means capital K or capital C, like nationality, for example, right? That's a proper adjective. So where something's from, or its nationality, or something like that. An area, Asia, right? If it's Asian or it's North American, that belongs there. And the last one is purpose. It gets a little bit mixed up in the middle there. It tends to get a little bit mixed up in the middle there. Even if you're a native speaker, you just do it automatically and you might do it wrong, right? So anyway, that's the order. This is adjective order. Not the biggest deal in the world. You're not gonna lose points, but I mean, I want to teach you English. I want to teach you the rules, and I want you to teach you how to write well. So that's the rules. Okay? If you don't follow them perfectly, it's just like grammar. Well, do your best and keep working on it and fix it. Eventually you'll get it. Okay? We're not going for perfection here though. We're going for improvement. That's the way I would like to frame it. Okay. So let's talk about the next thing. How to talk about a person. Well, I'll give you the example first. I'll give you the example from the book, and then we'll go from there. I'll block my adjective list, and I'll stand to the side a little bit here. In the book, they've got this person called Jack Collins. Jack Collins is the most amazing person I have ever met. He came to my school and talked about his difficult life in prison. He was in prison for 15 years. He made a lot of mistakes when he was young, but now he has changed his life. He saw a lot of violence in prison, so he uses his experience to help high school students. Jack is tall and he looks strong. He usually has a serious expression, but he has a kind face. The thing I remember most is his sensitive personality. He really wants to help young people. I've never met anyone like Jack before. Okay, so there's a lot of adjectives in there, as usual. Just like when we were talking about a place, adjectives are very useful for describing a place, and they're also very useful for describing a person. Now, I don't think I actually put appearance up here for some reason, so we'll add that as well. So when you describe a person, you're going to have these elements that explain who the person is. This is going to be the second response paper topic, but that I'm not going to assign that now. I'm just giving you time to think about it, that you may want to at some point think about a person who you think is really interesting. Now, just so you know, if you're thinking about the person, it has to be a person who is well known, okay? Not a family member. It's not supposed to be personal. Not a family member or a classmate or a friend, or somebody you're romantically interested in personally, okay? It has to be not necessarily a celebrity per se, but an important person who you can get information about, who you don't know. You don't know them personally. I don't want this. I want this to be less subjective, right? Obviously you're going to have to make judgments about this person, but I would like you to try and refrain from being biased about the person if possible. So you've got to take a person who's like a public figure, that there's enough information for you to gather, and I want you to do it in English. So if it's a Korean person, they have to be famous enough that there's information that you can find in English, okay? Because one of the things I want to talk about for the second response paper is getting sources for something, okay? This is very important because if you write about a person, if you're doing a biography, you must say where you got the information from. If it's a biography about a person who you've never met, you better have some good sources, right? Some things that they wrote, or some things that they said, or some scholarship that's been done about them. If I'm going to write a biography about Albert Einstein, I better get some things that are recorded by him or written by him, or that other famous people have done research about him, and I can use their sources to build my own picture of Albert Einstein. If it's a person, that's why we're doing this on purpose, that you can't actually know the person personally, because then maybe you wouldn't need things that were written down. If you're writing about your mother, you don't need to look at your mother's diaries or her text messages or the book that she wrote or anything else. You don't even probably need to interview her, because you can just remember things that she did and that she said that you saw personally. Okay, so there's got to be some distance between you and the subject. So there is a story to be told, about this person, but I don't want you to write a story, because this is not what we're doing in this class. This is not we're not doing creative writing. We're not doing narratives. However, a person's life, we human beings love stories. Stories is the way, like is the way that human beings understand each other, and that's how we understand life. So you're not going to be able to just, I don't want a list of facts. I don't want a Wikipedia article reproduced, like your own version of the Wikipedia page on Albert Einstein. I don't want that. I don't not want his birthplace, his nationality, the schools, his honors, his theories in a big list. I do want you to frame it somewhat like a story. You're gonna have to, there's gonna have to be a beginning, and there's gonna have to be a middle, and there's gonna have to be an end, right? If the person is still alive, the beginning is you're gonna start it somewhere. You don't need to start it with their birth, though. The story about them, I'm not asking for a biography here. I'm asking you to talk about the person. This is what this paragraph does, right? The person actually encountered them. But they're talking about the details that are important. They don't talk about exactly where he lived, exactly when he was born, or how old he is. The important details are there, like he was in prison for 15 years, right? So he might be 40 years old like me, or he might be 50. He was in jail for a long time, but now he's like a promotional speaker, a public speaker, and he tries to use his experience, right, to inform young people and affect their lives positively. That idea should be in the topic sentence. Jack Collins is the most amazing person I've ever met, because he uses his life experience to help other people. That would make it a much better argument, right? That would make the paragraph so much better. And of course, this is just too short. It's too brief. This is university, so I want you to write a couple pages, not a quarter of a page, okay? So the examples in this textbook are always kind of weak, because they're all too short. There's very few of them that are even a whole page, right? Because they're just teaching you the basics. So you've got to remember that whatever you look at in the book, it's a basic example. There's good things about it, like the structure is perfect, the topic sentence is weak, but the structure is perfect, and there's no grammatical or punctuation, there's no mechanical errors whatsoever. This book has been edited so that there's no mechanical mistakes, no punctuation mistakes, capitalization, there's no spelling mistakes, okay? So in that sense, it's good to read it over, because that's how we improve our writing also, is by reading, right? You see the examples. Oh, this is how you write, a good solid sentence with no errors. That's the best way to do it. Okay, so you got to tell the story, but don't just leave it at the story. The story is basically a series of events that you think are important, and you got to talk about how the person handles those events, right? The adversity, okay? For example, we love these kind of things. This person had a hard time. They were struggling for some reason. They faced some adversity, which they overcame, and then became a very successful person. And we admire them even more because they overcame those things. Some people fail, but they succeeded even though it was hard, right? If somebody just, no offense to the royal family, because I think they have a hard time in various ways too, but I mean, if you're just born and you're a prince, you don't have to do anything to become a prince. You just are, right? You have to be a good prince. I mean, if Prince William and Princess Kate, his wife, if they're good representatives of the royal family, that means they developed themselves. But they didn't, the adversity that they faced is different, right? They don't have to overcome, for example, poverty. They were not poor. They were not in danger. They were safe, right? They were protected. The adversity they have to overcome is different. They have to face, like, for example, public criticism. No matter what they do, everybody's watching them and criticizing them, saying, oh, we like you, we don't like you. Why are you dressed like that? Why you look like that? What are you doing? Why did you say that? Right? You imagine? I wouldn't want to be a prince. I'm very happy being middle class. Thank you very much. But you don't get the same kind of respect if you're born into the upper class. Everybody considers that a privilege, because it is. Because you don't have to overcome basic things like how much money can I make, and can I afford a place to live, and where am I going to get my food from, and how am I going to support my family, or how am I going to find somebody to live with, some friends. I think Prince William has too many people that want to be his friends, and he has to try and find out if they're his real friends, if they just want to hang out with him because he's rich and he's famous. These are different problems, right? The rich have their own problems. Sometimes we call this first world problems, right? You don't, not all of your basic needs are taken care of, so your problems are mostly psychological and social and political. So those are not the same level of problems. Real adversity means overcoming something that human beings struggle with on a basic level. I'm giving my own definition here, okay? You can disagree with me. At any point, you can disagree with me. This class is about argumentation, right? This is another thing. If you're in class and I tell you all these things, all these perspectives, this is part of writing, right? I'm processing information, and I'm not telling you to think a certain way. I'm just suggesting that this is an element that makes a person more exceptional. If you disagree and you think Prince William is an exceptional person, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just trying to point you in the right direction. Where is the person? What do they look like? What's their attitude? What obstacles have they overcome? What things happen to them? These all contribute to this person and story. But what you need to do is there's a result, right? There's a success. There's a measurement at the end of the day. You say, this person is a good person, or this person's a bad person, right? They did a lot of things right, and they did some things wrong. Or you don't have to choose. An exceptional person doesn't have to be a good person, right? If you want to choose somebody who's considered nefarious, notorious, or evil, then you may do that, okay? Certain people are not recommended. I mean, the worst people in the world are probably difficult to write about objectively. So Adolf Hitler and people of that type are probably not the best choices, but you certainly shouldn't just only praise the person. That would be very biased, right? If I decide to write about Yi Sun-shin, because I do have an affinity for Yi Sun-shin, I've always been interested in his life and his story, and I've written my own things about him, and I've read Nanjung Ilgi and read books in English about East Asia and Imjin Wedan and everything, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and the daimyo. I've read lots of stuff about that conflict, that era, and that person. And there's a lot of different perspectives. Obviously, Koreans grow up believing he's a hero because he is. But he's not perfect. He's a human being, right? He made mistakes. He was strict sometimes, and he was angry sometimes, and he was sick sometimes, and he was healthy other times. He never lost a battle, so you can say he's a perfect admiral, right? He barely got a scratch from any of his battles on the ocean, and then he died mysteriously in the last battle, which makes me think that he somehow wanted to die in that last Noryang, right? In that last naval battle, that chasing the Japanese, that he wanted to kill as many of them as he could, and that he was old enough. He was in his 50s, and that after the war, what was he going to become? Think about that. He was the greatest, perhaps the greatest Korean ever. I mean, along with Sejong, but certainly in his age, in his time, he was the greatest Korean. Even in his time, he was a hero. He was tortured and attacked. He came back, Myeongnang. He came back and had like 13 ships, and he had to fight against 300 Japanese, and somehow he pulled that off. And then the war is over. What is that guy going to do when he retires? He's going to be the most famous, most loved person. Nobody's ever going to leave him alone, especially the king, who tortured him and almost killed him, and then decided to let him go back to do his job of protecting Korea. It's a very complicated story, right? There's all kinds of different angles you can take, and try and consider those angles. You have to make connections between these events. What was his attitude? Was he a nice guy? I don't think Lee Sun-shin was a nice guy. I'm sorry. He killed thousands of people, and he pushed his men. They loved him because he was so talented, because he was so brave. They didn't love him because he was nice. They didn't love him because he was generous either. If you stole some money or did something out of order in Lee Sun-shin's in his command, he killed you. That's not nice, right? He's inspiring. He's charismatic. He was an expert archer. He was a master strategist. All of these things are positive, but we can't ignore all the other elements of it. Would he have been so great if he was nice? He couldn't be nice. He had to be ruthless, actually, right? He had to push himself and his men continuously without any, with how could he have done that? How could he have won? Because he was driven, right? Okay, you agree with me or you don't agree with me. This is my paper about Lee Sun-shin and not yours, okay? So this is the kind of thing that you got to consider. Keep it in the back of your mind what person you're going to choose. Dead or alive, man or woman, doesn't matter. Has to be human. It has to be somebody that you've never met in person, okay? Those are the rules for the topic. And we'll continue to go through this chapter next class and then into the social media topic in week 9. But that'll probably carry over a little bit into our class. We've got a lot of stuff to do in week 10. So week 10 is going to be a mix of like chapter 3 to 6, like a lot of stuff. But I'm looking forward to it. One more week online like this, and then I'll see you upstairs and we can talk about everything. Good luck in your midterms, as I said yesterday. Good luck on your midterms and other classes. And I will see you in 2 weeks.